Hello and welcome to the video lecture associated with the major objectives, advantages, disadvantages of database management systems. So first of all, what is this thing trying to establish, right? We want location transparency and we want local autonomy. These are the two major objectives of why you would create a distributed database management system environment. As far as local transparency, the local users don't have to know the location of the data, and the data requests are automatically forwarded to the appropriate sites. So, and we'll talk about this in a later video lecture, you can have, as we spoke about the environments, you can have data that's mirrored, so all of your nodes are exactly the same, or you can have a heterogeneous environment. So if it's a heterogeneous environment, the local user, when they put forth a request, they don't have to know that their request gets rerouted to Tennessee to get its information. All they need to know is to get their information back. So as far as they're concerned, they think they're working locally. The other end of that, so from the server end of things, I can have servers all over the place, distributed everywhere, and the local users don't know the difference, and that can be a great performance. That could be a great performance advantage if my manufacturing is in, say, Tennessee, and my accounting offices are in New York. So all of my manufacturing information can be stored locally in Tennessee, and that database doesn't necessarily need to talk to New York on a regular basis. So all of the manufacturing transactions can happen locally in Tennessee, and that information is simply available to my accounting offices in New York. So when you talk about network traffic, right, which isn't free, remember, we're not talking about having exclusive, unlimited privileges to just send data across the World Wide Web. There are charges associated with this. So a lot of this has to do with costs. The second part of it is the local autonomy. The local sites can operate with this database when network connections fail. So wouldn't it be terrible if we had to shut down manufacturing operations in Tennessee because we lost our connection to our data center in New York, for instance? And each site controls its own data, its own security, its own logging, its own recovery, because the databases are distributed and located in different places. So that also, politically makes the manufacturing manager in Tennessee feel like they are in more control of their data and their environment. So when we talk about trade-offs, if you talk about synchronous versus asynchronous, if you're in a synchronous distributed database, all the copies have to be kept identical. So the data updates are immediate and applied to all the copies. So that's great for data integrity, but the overhead is significant. You can imagine all of that network traffic that has to happen between all of these different nodes. This is something like a Citibank has to be synchronous. This can cause slow response times. You have to use, like T1 lines, and again, there's an extra cost for using T1 lines to reduce these slow response times or increase the slow response times, depending on how you look at it. Asynchronous is going to be cheaper. The problems with this is that you are going to have to tolerate some kind of data inconsistency because they are not identical. The propagation of any kind of updates is delayed. It doesn't happen synchronously, so there is going to be some latency involved in the data updates. That means your data integrity is lowered, right? So as far as reporting purposes are concerned, you're going to be out of sync for some amount of time, whatever that might be. It's cheaper, and it has faster response times. But again, there are trade-offs. There are advantages, and we'll talk about some of those in just a minute. So note at the bottom of this that this all assumes that it is replicated data, and we're going to discuss what is referred to as replicated data in just a few minutes. So let's talk about some advantages of distributed databases over a centralized database. We're going to have increased reliability and availability because we've got all of these mirrored nodes all over the place. We do have local control over data, even though they are typically mirrored. There's modular growth, right? So I don't have, I can, as I grow, I can change very quickly. I'm going to have, again, lower communications costs and faster response times. Disadvantages, however, is that there is a significant cost in the software and the complexity. There's a lot of processing overhead. There is data integrity exposures. And again, for some queries, there is slower response times. But that is the end of my video lecture associated with the major objectives and the advantages and disadvantages of distributed databases.